Hi guys, welcome back. Something new again today. We're going to cover a vase, basically give it a drip effect into our silicone mold and create a matching plate. So let me tell you what you need to get started. So we have our vase. We have a nice big silicone mold, obviously. I've got some used ratio containers because I want to be able to lift my vase up, and I'll show you that technique soon. Got some cups to be able to mix up our colours. We are using Resi Clear today, and I've got our range of colours. So I've got some metallic colours here. We've got silver black, we've got our orange yellow, we have our flash mauve, our intense sparkle white, and I'm going to create a custom red with our scarlet red, combining that with the mauve. I've pre-mixed a batch of our Resi Clear, so if you want to go over how we basically measure and mix, please refer to the video link attached. Some art stirrers, paddle pop sticks to be able to mix our colours, and our trusty gloves. For all our cleanup, I've got a cloth, I've got our Resi ISO, which is a part of my standard toolkit. So let's get started. Vase, I'm an Aussie. We're not French, it's not vase. Okay. Now I am using a glass vase or vase, whatever you want to call it. But because it is glass, I have actually etched up the surface. So if you take a look there, you can actually see that it's all frosted and all has fine scratches all over it. I did go over this with 240 grit sandpaper all over the exterior, over the base here, just so I can get a little bit of a mechanical bond as well as a chemical bond with our Resi Clear. Now, if I set this in here and I fill resin all over the top of it, and then I want to move it so then I can fill in the rest of my tray, what's going to happen? I'm going to touch it, going to make marks all over it. So the aim is for me to lift this up ever so slightly, which is why I've got some used ratio containers. I'm going to sit this on top, so when I go to move it, I actually have an area to grab, and I can basically lift it, move it to a safer position while the rest of it's dripping off, and then I can continue on and use my silicone tray and fill out my plate. Definitely recommend having something just high enough just to be able to put your fingers under, and that way you can safely remove it. And I've got a drop sheet here, so I'll be basically sitting it on a drop sheet, so anything that does come off when it's still dripping, I can just peel it off later and still reuse my drop sheet. Okay, so I've got our setup here. I'm going to quickly divide up my resin into some cups and start mixing some colours. Now, I don't want to add too many colours to my mixture, so I'm sort of pretty much going to aim for about 4. I will leave a component of it clear, so that way I can add that back to the centre of my plate when I've removed the vase. If I have too many colours, I find that what happens when you're doing a drip vase and putting it into the silicone plate and catching it, you end up with a bit of a mush of colours instead of having sort of separated colours of, like, for instance, your black and your red and your orangey colour. You'll end up having, if you do multiple, like 5 to 10, you end up going to have a big mix of what could potentially be brown or something that you're not aiming for. So less is more. Okay. Now, I said earlier I wanted to create a custom colour. And it is very hard to get a really good quality metallic red. So we've got close, we've got our flash mauve, and I'm going to use our translucent scarlet red and add that in and create our own cherry colour. So I'm going to put basically one little scoop of that in and a whole heap of my scarlet red translucent dye. Probably 20 drops, but who's counting? But as long as I'm not going over like what would be 5% of dye into my resin mixture, then I'm fine. It won't change the consistency with regards to curing for my resin. So that's given me a nice, really sort of candied metallic red. And that's what I love using our translucent dyes for, or combining metallic powders too, to create your own custom colours. Next colour is our intense sparkle white. Some of the particles in this one are a little heavier, so I am going to make sure and treat it very similar to the way I do with glitter and add a fair amount to this one. And that way I've got more of a chance of it having full coverage instead of some of it sinking and having a lot of translucent resin. And as you can see when I'm mixing it up like the side of the container here, you can still see that it's got a fair amount of translucency to it in this mixture. So I'm actually going to add a bit more in. All right, let's see if that's enough. Otherwise, next step, whole jar. And that's a bit better consistency now. You can see that it's more of a solid colour. Perfect. Now we are going to have some silver black. Now I know it's going to get asked, so for all the Karens out there, I'm not wearing a mask, but I'm okay. I'm working in a well-ventilated area. All of our resins are VOC free, which is volatile organic compound free. And our resin is 100% solid, so no additives. And it's things like the additives and the VOCs that are released during the chemical reaction of mixing part A and part B together. So we don't have those toxic fumes being released. But if you are concerned or you have any respiratory illnesses, please do wear a mask and safeguard yourself. Lucky last colour. This one's our orange yellow. Mix this guy in. All right, we've got our 4 colours. We've got our cherry red, intense spark white, cherry red, I've renamed this colour by the way, our orange yellow and our silver black. I'm gonna make a little bit of space, pop my black nitrile gloves on, and I'm gonna get pouring. Okay, one final tidy up I'm going to do is just give my cloth a little bit of a spray with our Resi isopropyl and just make sure I have no excess dust or anything like that on my vase or vase if you're an Aussie. And we are going to start pouring. So I think I'm going to start with my base colour. I'll try to get a good amount of coverage with the black, but because this is a drip, a fair bit of this is sort of going to move off, and you are going to have to sort of keep repeating your colours to get it to stay on. It's very satisfying, I must say that. You've probably seen a multitude of videos where people have these little fancy plastic devices on the top that divide up and have the colour drip down in sections. I don't think that's necessary. Just an extra cost for you. But if it's something that you like and you like that sort of patterning come down, then by all means go for it. I'm going to add our orange yellow in, but the aim is to try, and I might have to just shuffle it around just to see where my coverage is so far, to try sort of fill in the areas where the black hasn't dripped as much, and to get more of an even drip down and coverage on it. If you wanted to attempt something like this, but you're too scared to do it on a larger scale, you could potentially do it over a tumbler or something like that as well, or a smaller vase. And if you were getting into resin and just starting and you had something like our infusion kit has a 600 ml bottle of our Resi Clear in it, and you only use about 90 grams of that to fill up your infusion template. So say if you had an infusion kit and you wanted to do something small and test it out on a project like this, you'd actually have a fair amount of leftover resin to be able to do a smaller vase or a cup. So it's something to consider if you're getting into resin as a starter. It doesn't have to be where you are an experienced resin user to attempt things like this. I'm just using our intense sparkle white now. Side note, remove your stirrer. And again, I'm trying to fill some of those drips that are happening in the voids that are towards the base of the vase. As I'm building this up, you'll notice that the more of it's staying on the base of the vase with the resin itself levels. So I'm not concerned. I don't feel like I need to scoop it out or anything like that. It'll end up self-leveling, and what will need to be removed will sort of drip over the sides. So it's still going to remain flat after it's cured. So we won't have it like a domed top or anything like that, which will affect the use of the vase later on. Now I might, just to help it along, just spread some of the resin over the sections that aren't sort of being covered by the drips just currently. So that way when I do the next layer, it's like the path of least resistance. So the resin will just want to fall down on the paths that are already sort of covered. So if I'm filling it in, I'll have a better chance of getting a really good coverage down the base. With the little bit of clear that I had left over, I'm actually going to mix up a little bit more of my silver black, because I did use a fair bit of that in my initial pour and pretty much emptied what I had. And I'm going to concentrate it a little bit more too, so I don't have as much translucent resin running down the side. A fair bit of that has to do with the amount of metallic powder I've added. I want it highly concentrated so that way it is more opaque. But my plate's looking awesome as a bonus. I can't lean away from anything that I do. I try to aim not to be too dark and too gothic, and now I have a gothic hibiscus occurring. Okay, so I'll do a little bit more black. Actually, I'm going to give it a quick mist as well with isopropyl. I do notice there's some fine bubbles on the outside, so I just want to pop those as they're coming along. Pour a little bit more of my black in. Another way to have this really effective is also, I have let my resin warm up a little bit, but you could also let it thicken up ever so slightly. But the best way I advise doing that is not keeping it in a big deep container, is potentially just spreading it out into a few different cups at thinner levels and let it sort of thicken up that way. If you leave it in a deeper cup and try to have it warm up that way, you'll end up cooking off your resin too quick and it'll end up flash curing, so you won't be able to use it. But the slightly thicker the resin is, the easier it is to have it stay in your areas that you want it dripping down. And I'm really loving this like candied red at the moment. This looks really cool. I'm just turning it around so I can see where I'm pouring as well. Looks super cool. I use a little bit more. Again, like I said earlier, this is going to be like layers and layers, so I'm going to use a little bit more of my intense sparkle white. We go from gothic hibiscus to peppermints to edible toffee apples. We're going back to black now. It's looking pretty cool. Some more red. Okay. At the moment I'm going to leave it here. So I've got some contrast between some solid, a little bit of sparkle, a little bit of translucency, and I have enough resin to be able to basically make my plate now. And that way I'm not wasting it as well. Obviously you get a lot of coverage and a lot of runoff from creating vases. I am going to give it a little mist with isopropyl, again to remove those bubbles that are sitting on the surface at the moment of the resin. I'm just going to quick clean up. Move my cups out of the way so that way I can remove my vase very gently and have it sit on the side here. And that way it'll continue to drip. And my aim with the drips on the what will be the top side of the vase is, as it's starting to really thicken up, I will actually get back in there and use my art stick, paddle pop stick, to actually scrape along the bottom there and basically baby it. Keep an eye on it, and as it's sort of dripping like that, scrape it off. You could potentially put sort of tape in the underside or inside if you wanted to sort of have something pull off at a later date. But at the moment it's a very quick and easy method just to sort of man your resin job, so to speak, and to scrape those drips off as it's thickening up. Now, I don't want to disrupt my plate too much, and I am going to get dirty. You definitely need gloves for this one. I'm going to try pinch it underneath, suction it back out, and just pop it over the side to continue dripping. And the drips that come off now will be very minimal, so I will have saved most of it here. Now I'm just going to change my gloves because my hands are very sticky at the moment. Okay, new gloves, and with the little bit of translucent resin that I've got left, I'm going to pour that in the center before my Stranger Things hole closes up here. And because my resin is thickening up, a fair bit of this will stay where it is, so I may even move it around a little bit from the center out quickly. You have to be careful when you're doing this so you don't actually spill too much of it. If you didn't want to just have a plate you can actually man this as well, and it does, I get asked often, how long do you leave it before you pull it out of your silicone mold to be able to transform it into a bowl and shape it into a bowl? And that question's very similar to how long is a piece of string, because the depth that I'm pouring here can change that time frame by a couple of hours. How warm I've let my resin go first before pouring it in can change that time by a couple of hours. The fact that I'm using Resi Clear and I've half filled my silicone tray means I could potentially do it in around about a 5-hour period, but you aim to basically stay with your job if you want to have it molded into a different shape, and basically pull away a little bit from the edge of your silicone mold, and if it starts to pull away sort of clearly and it still has a reasonable amount of flex to it without being sticky, then that's the time frame you want to move on it. Now I'm just going to get in with my paddle pop stick and just sort of drag from exterior through to this center portion, just so I can get a bit more of a pattern happening between the two layers and the translucent that I poured in. It's given it a little bit of depth there. Give it a spray with my Resi isopropyl because I've just stirred all of that up and there were a few bubbles when I was moving it around. I'm not sure that a great deal of it's going to move more towards my center now, so I have a couple of different options here. I can leave it, I can drag some towards the center portion so I don't have an open hole. It depends on your personal taste. Or I can even add a little bit of like silver foil in there or copper foil in there, or even a little bit of glitter. I think I've got a lot of colors going on here though, so personally I'm not going to add those. I might just ever so slightly drag some portions into this so it just doesn't look like I've got a plain circle in the middle. And I'm just doing it lightly. I'm not actually scraping too much on the bottom. You can see now I've sort of blended my tray in a little bit more. So I won't do much else. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it sit and do its thing. There will be some slight movements. I mean, this is the beauty of resin. Unless you're sort of sitting there time-lapsing it and watching it, there will be changes after you've poured it to when you come back and view the end result. Same goes with this one. With our vase, we are a fair amount of translucency now. I do have little bits of my thickened up resin left that I could potentially just dribble down the outsides now. But it depends on the look that you're going for. It's all personal taste, so there's no right or wrong. So hope you guys enjoyed this little tutorial and showing you how not to waste resin, have another product and a matching plate to our matching vase. But if you have any questions, make sure you leave them in the comments below. Don't forget to like, to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.